My name is Margaret Campbell. I'm 44, and I'm a trauma surgeon. I'm trained to walk into blood, panic, broken bones, screaming families, and still know exactly what has to happen first. But nothing in an operating room prepared me for the sound I heard when I came home early that afternoon. My daughter was sobbing inside my own house, the kind of terrified cry that makes a mother stop breathing before she even understands why. I pushed the front door open wider and froze just long enough to see the truth. My father was in my living room, yelling threats at a child, while my older sister was tearing through my bedroom like a thief who already believed she deserved everything she touched. Drawers were open. My mother's old jewelry box was missing off the dresser. Papers from my file cabinet were scattered across the hallway. Someone had been searching for the deed, the apartment documents, and the folder I kept locked away for a reason. For 1 second, the surgeon in me tried to triage the scene. Child first, exit second, threat, evidence fourth. The mother in me wanted to run straight at them. Instead, I stepped back into the shadow beside the hallway, pulled out my phone and dialed 911 without making a sound. My family broke into my house. They're threatening my daughter. Send police now. Before I tell you what they were really searching for and why the sirens outside ruined a lot more than their afternoon, tell me, what time is it where you're watching this from? The operator told me to stay on the line, and I did. Every instinct in me screamed to rush into that room, but my daughter Hazel was only 8. She was brave the way kids try to be brave when adults terrify them, silent, stiff, trying not to make it worse. My father, Charles, stood over her with one hand braced on the wall, blocking the hallway like my home belonged to him. My older sister, Rachel, was in my bedroom dumping drawers onto the floor, muttering under her breath. I heard the nightstand scrape against the wall, then the crack of something fragile breaking. Tell me where your mother keeps the folder. Don't act stupid, you've seen it. Hazel cried harder. I don't know. She's lying, Rachel called from my room. Margaret always hides things, jewelry, contracts, bank papers. She thinks she's better than us. My hand tightened around the phone. I was still half hidden behind the hallway corner, and the operator could hear enough now that I wasn't exaggerating. Charles lowered his voice, and that made it worse. Listen to me, little girl. Your mother is selfish. If she loved this family, she'd help us. If she doesn't sign those papers, people are going to lose everything. Hazel whispered, Please don't yell. That's when something in me went completely still. Not calm, surgical. Rachel came out of my bedroom holding a stack of documents. Found copies of the apartment agreement, not the transfer certificate. She must have moved it. Charles cursed. Then we make her sign new ones. That's when I stepped into the living room, and my daughter saw me first.
Hazel saw me first. Her face changed so fast it nearly broke me. Hope, shame, fear, relief, all of it flashing across her eyes before she tried to stand. Charles spun around. Margaret, he barked, like I was the intruder. Rachel appeared behind him, my mother's necklace in one hand, my property folder in the other. For 1 second, nobody moved. Hazel, I said, come to me. Charles shifted like he wanted to block her. I raised my phone. Don't. He looked at the phone, then at my face. Are you recording us? Yes. Rachel's face twisted. You psycho, you're recording your own family? No, I said. I'm recording two adults who broke into my house, stole jewelry, threatened my daughter, and searched for legal documents they had no right to touch. Charles stepped toward me. Careful how you talk to your father. That sentence might have worked 10 years ago, maybe even 5. Back then, I still believed respect meant obedience, still believed helping family meant bleeding quietly so they could call it love. But Hazel was hiding behind my leg now, shaking so hard her fingers dug into my scrubs, and every old rule I'd ever followed died right there. "You're not in charge here," I said. "This is my house. Those are my documents. That's my child." Rachel threw the folder onto the coffee table. Papers slid across the glass. "Your house, your documents, your child. That's always the problem with you. Everything is yours." "Because I worked for it," I said. Charles laughed, but his face had gone pale around the mouth. "You think being a doctor makes you untouchable? We made sacrifices for you." I made loans out of my guilt, and I paid them until I finally learned the difference between helping and being hunted. Rachel's eyes flickered. She hadn't expected that. Neither had Charles. I looked down at the folder on the table. Apartment records, insurance papers, an old tax copy, a blank transfer form my attorney told me never to throw away. But something else was missing. My spare key. Gone from the kitchen drawer. "How did you get in?" I asked. Charles crossed his arms. "Don't start. How'd you get into my locked house?" "It is now," I said, looking at Rachel. "You took my spare key at Hazel's birthday party." Rachel's lips pressed into a flat line. Charles slammed his hand on the coffee table hard enough that Hazel flinched. My arm wrapped around her instantly. "Sign the papers," he growled. "Rachel's lender needs collateral, and my land's already tied up. We transfer your apartment share temporarily. We fix everything." "Temporarily?" I repeated. "Is that what you call forging my name?" His eyes narrowed. Rachel said, too fast, "Nobody forged anything." I turned my phone so they could both see the call timer still running. "Police are coming." Outside, faint but growing, I heard the first siren cut through the air. Charles's face changed the second he heard the siren, rage sliding into calculation, the way it always did when he realized yelling wasn't going to fix what he'd already done. "Margaret, listen to me. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them you overreacted." Rachel stepped closer, suddenly soft, suddenly desperate. "Please, you don't understand what this will do to us." I almost asked what terrifying a child would do to Hazel. I already knew the answer. They wouldn't care until the consequences reached their own front door. "You still think this is about what happens to you," I said. It wasn't a question. Charles lowered his voice. "You're making a mistake you can't undo." I looked at my daughter, then at my sister's bag, then at the man standing in the center of the home I built after years of double shifts and grief. "No," I said. "For once, I'm going to tell the truth." The siren stopped close enough that the windows trembled. Charles moved, not toward the door, toward me. He reached for my wrist. I stepped back just as the front door opened behind him. 2 officers walked in with the kind of calm that makes guilty people suddenly remember their manners. "Police, everyone stay where you are." Charles dropped his hand like it had burned him. Rachel shoved the necklace deeper into her bag, but one of the officers saw it happen. I saw him see it. That was the first crack in their whole performance. "Officers," Charles said, lifting both hands in a wounded, fatherly gesture. "This is a family disagreement. My daughter's tired from work. She's emotional." I almost laughed. Emotional. That's always the word men like him use when a woman stops obeying. "Ma'am, are you the caller?" the first officer asked. "Yes, Margaret. This is my home. My father and sister entered without permission, searched my bedroom, stole jewelry, and threatened my daughter to pressure me into signing property documents." "That's a lie," snapped Rachel. Hazel pressed her face into my side. I held up my phone. "The 911 call is still connected. I recorded the last several minutes, too." Charles's eyes went cold. "Margaret, one word, a warning." The officer stepped between us. "Sir, don't speak to her right now." The second officer asked Rachel to put the bag on the floor. She refused. He asked again. Her hand shook when she finally dropped it. When he opened it, the room went silent in a way I'll never forget. My mother's pearl necklace, 2 rings, my spare key, a folded transfer form, a notary stamp that didn't belong to anyone in my house, and several pages with my name already typed into the signature line. The officer held up the notary stamp like it weighed more than it should have. "Whose documents are these?" Rachel looked at Charles. Charles looked at the floor. That was answer enough. They separated us. Hazel and I moved to the kitchen while Rachel started crying, not from guilt, from being caught. Charles tried a different mask. "I'm a grandfather," he said. "I was trying to protect my family from financial ruin." "By threatening a child?" the officer said. "You don't understand our situation." "I understand what's in that bag." Rachel shouted from the doorway, "Margaret set us up." That almost made me smile, because the truth was so much better. I hadn't set anyone up. I'd just stopped covering for them. My house had cameras because Rachel once misplaced a bracelet at my place and insisted I must have lost it. My locks had digital logs because Charles had a habit of showing up while I was at work. My attorney kept copies of everything because people who demand trust the loudest are usually the reason you need records in the first place. The second officer asked Hazel if she was hurt. She shook her head, then whispered, "He said Mom would lose the house if I didn't tell him where the folder was." That sentence ended whatever was left of Charles's performance. They cuffed him first. He fought it with words, not fists, which somehow made him look smaller. "Margaret, you're going to destroy this family." "No," I said. "I'm protecting what's left of it." Rachel screamed when they cuffed her, claiming the jewelry was family jewelry, claiming the papers were just copies, claiming Hazel was dramatic. But the neighbors had already stepped onto their porches. The woman across the street, who'd brought a casserole after my mother died, watched Rachel get walked out with my mother's necklace sealed in an evidence bag. Charles saw the neighbors watching. That's when his face finally changed. Not regret, humiliation. And for men like him, humiliation cuts deeper than guilt ever could. An officer stayed behind after the cars pulled away and asked if we had somewhere safe to stay that night. I looked around my own living room, drawers emptied onto the floor, a broken picture frame, papers all over the coffee table, and realized safety isn't just a locked door. It's knowing the people outside that door respect your right to keep it closed. "We'll be okay," I said, though my voice sounded older than it had that morning. He handed me a card. "Dr. Campbell, this might be more than trespassing. A detective will want to talk to you." I thought the worst part was over. I was wrong. What happened in my house that day was only the surface. The real theft had started months earlier, and I didn't find out how deep it went until the next morning when Detective Harris called and said 4 words that changed everything. "We found something else." Detective Harris asked me to come to the station. "We found something concerning," she said. "Several things, actually. I already knew it would be bad. I didn't know it would be calculated." Rachel's bag had held more than jewelry and a fake notary stamp. There was a printed copy of my hospital shift schedule. Not a guess, not a coincidence. Someone had known exactly when I'd be gone that day. Harris asked who had access to it. I thought about Rachel texting me 2 weeks earlier, asking if I was still working those long Tuesday shifts. I thought about Charles offering to pick Hazel up from school to help me out, and getting angry when I said no. I thought about my spare key disappearing the day of Hazel's birthday party. Every small moment I'd brushed off as annoying now lined up clean, in order, like instruments laid out before surgery. That evening, my attorney, Kevin, came over and went through the police inventory at my kitchen table. He didn't soften any of it. "Margaret, this wasn't a messy family argument. This is attempted fraud, burglary, coercion, and theft." He slid a property valuation across the table. The number on it made me go cold. My mother's apartment share was worth far more now than when she left it to me. They hadn't broken in for jewelry. The jewelry was a bonus. They'd broken in for control. Within days, Rachel posted online about being betrayed by a selfish sister, about debts and sacrifice, and people who forget who raised them once they start making doctor money. She never mentioned Hazel, never mentioned the fake stamp, never mentioned being arrested with our mother's necklace in her purse. Charles called relatives from jail and told them I'd sent police after him for refusing to help family. I didn't write paragraphs defending myself. I sent the family group chat one line: "I will not discuss an active criminal case. A child was threatened in my home. Evidence was recovered by police. That's all." Then I said nothing else. Silence did more damage than pleading ever could have. Within 48 hours, one cousin apologized, then an aunt, then a neighbor knocked on my door with a casserole and red eyes. At the hearing, the prosecutor played the 911 call first, my whisper filling the room, then Charles's voice in the background demanding the folder, then the hallway camera footage, then the bag's contents laid out one by one, then a text message Detective Harris had recovered between Charles and Rachel, sent the morning of the break-in. "If Hazel's scared, Margaret will fold." Nobody in that courtroom said they were wrong to terrify a child. Nobody said they were wrong to steal. The judge noticed that too. Charles pleaded to burglary, attempted extortion, and child endangerment, 18 months in county custody, probation, mandatory counseling, and a 5-year no-contact order protecting me and Hazel. Rachel pleaded to burglary, theft, and attempted fraud, a split sentence, home confinement, restitution, and a permanent mark on the real estate license she'd been chasing. Hazel asked me the night before court if being scared meant you weren't brave. I told her no, being brave doesn't mean you aren't scared. She asked if family meant you had to forgive people. I told her forgiveness is personal, but safety isn't optional. You can forgive someone someday and still never hand them a key to your house again. We walked out of that courthouse into cold sunlight, and for the first time in months, she didn't hide behind me. She just held my hand. "Are we still a family?" she asked. "Yes, you and me, and the people who love us without trying to own us."